Today, we are plunging our hands into the filth of 2024. List season continues with my top 10 least favorite movies of the year. So, let's get into it. I actually found 2024 to be quite a decent year for movies. There was a lot of stuff that I quite enjoyed, and as you may know, as a film goer, I'm not going to intentionally try and watch something that I know is bad, apart from a couple of things that feel like big events where it's like, you just have to get in on this. So some of these movies are more bitter disappointments than actually terrible movies. I know a movie like Red One's going to be shit, or Kraven the Hunter, or something like that. So I like to stay away from those movies. I don't want to spend my money on that. But these movies, I did unfortunately spend some money on and was bitterly disappointed. And some of them were absolutely garbage. Let's start with number 10. So at 10, I have Rumours. This film premiered for me at the Brisbane International Film Festival. It's what I opened the film festival with this year. And it was a very rough start. I mean, it had a great still, which seemed quite fascinating. It looked like it could be a very funny satire talking about the world leaders and how incompetent they can be at making certain decisions. But everything in here that it's presenting in its satire is so painfully generic and presented in just incredibly uninteresting ways. There's 3 directors working on this film, and I think that is part of the problem, because this just lacks any kind of vision, really. There's a solid performance from Cate Blanchett. That's basically the only thing that I could easily praise, and it does look good in terms of its cinematography. But other than that, this was a very boring film that felt so up its own arse that I was completely done with this by the time it was over. At 9, I had to go with a Blumhouse horror. They sometimes release some good movies and they also release some dog shit, and Afraid unfortunately falls more in the dog shit category. The only redeeming factor of this movie was that it was just funny to laugh at. It felt like this movie completely gives up in its final 20 minutes. It ran out of budget or something. The writers lost all motivation and just wanted to wrap things up super quickly. And you just get this huge pile of plot holes and garbage in its final moments. And that doesn't mean that the other 60 minutes of this movie is good by any means. No, it's not. You have an interesting concept here, one that is timely, talking about AI and the horrors of that. But this film does absolutely nothing with that, with these bland, weak performances and a horror threat that isn't scary at all. This more works as a comedy than a horror, which I don't think was its intention. Stay away from this movie. It is just terrible. At 8, I have to put in Tarot. Another film that is kind of so stupid, it ended up being pretty funny. I mean, it's once again a generic horror film with an interesting concept utilizing tarot cards to determine their fate and give each of these characters a different horror threat. There could have been some great moments of creativity here, but that is just not the case here. Once again, just a generic horror film where a monster is picking off a group of teenagers who are just so stupid, making the dumbest decisions possible to basically get to each plot point. Doesn't really do anything for me. It's a film that is very forgettable. It's very hard remembering the details of some of these movies because they just get erased from your memory so fast because they're just that bland, uninspired, and boring. And Tarot definitely falls in that category for me. At 7, I had to put in Borderlands. Now, this film I actually specifically watched because I felt like there were some movies that were going to be on my top 10 list that were a little bit more deserving of not being on the list. So I had to put in some pure dog shit, and I had to watch Borderlands. Now, I've played the first Borderlands, so I'm quite familiar with the game. And let's be real here, the games don't have the greatest story in the world. Not one, at least, for a film to adapt. And yeah, that's what we got here. We got a weak-ass story You could see, I guess, some potential in here in terms of making it just a real fun, stupid, silly movie. But it's just, once again, so painfully generic, filled with sloppy MCU-like humor, unlikable characters that the film wants you to feel something for. Tiny Tina, I'm looking at you. Kate Blanchett, what are you doing here? She had 2 movies that she starred in that are on this list, and it's such a shame because, man, she's such a talented actress. It feels like this film, she doesn't belong here. I hope she got a good paycheck out of it, because this thing is edited poorly with shit montages that communicate nothing in a way that feels satisfying or inspired. You have some of the worst CGI I've seen in many years. I mean, this is like Matrix Reloaded level from like 20 years ago. It looks garbage. It doesn't look like anyone shot a scene together. All just green screen nonsense. It looks like slop, feels like slop. And even though I saw this about a week ago, another film that I'm having a hard time recollecting because it's just so damn forgettable. At number 6, this is probably the biggest hot take that I'm going to have for this list. A film that I think some people actually quite enjoyed, but these movies just aren't for me, and it continues here with Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. I mean, the title of this movie is just a straight lie. Godzilla isn't in this movie except for about 10 minutes or so. The quest is just whatever. The humor is stupid. It has forced product placement. The film was so unbelievably boring. I mean, I guess if I was a teenager or younger, this might be entertaining, but really, all this film feels like to me is a kid with action figures slamming them together. It has nothing of substance. And yes, I'm not expecting that from Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire, but I am expecting high quality entertainment, even if it is silly, and that does not deliver on this at all. I feel like it takes itself too seriously, and what you get is just pure mediocrity and something that I was so bored by. I just was so frustrated with the movie, and I just wanted to leave the theater. It did nothing for me. At 5, I have Our Little Secret, a Christmas movie. I mean, what happened to the Christmas movie genre, man? It feels like you used to get at least one really good one every year, filled with charm and just lovely, you know, great comedies, great romances. Some films that are considered some of the greatest of all time are surrounded in a Christmas theme. And once again, 2024 shows that you just still can't get a good Christmas movie. I mean, I am a little bit dishonest there. I guess last year we did get The Holdovers, which was absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not expecting that from Our Little Secret. But for fuck's sake, can you at least try? Once again, another generic romance story with characters that I don't give a fuck about, that are performed terribly. A film that feels so generic and made by just in a boardroom, and I just couldn't get behind this film at all. Once again, so boring, so forgettable. At 4, it's the bad movie of the year, apparently, the one that is on everyone's list, and I probably won't go into too much detail on it because every motherfucker has. Madam Web, I mean, it had to be on here, right? I saw this movie in a drive-in. I had to experience a full event for this movie, and by God, it was so shit. The ADR, the terrible storyline. It's not a superhero film at all, if you really think about it. It delivers what it's promising in like the final 2 minutes in a shitty compilation. There's terrible action sequences, horrible choreography. You have actors slamming the movie, making fun of it before it even comes out. And Dakota Johnson, I'm sorry, you don't get a pass. Just because you could talk shit about the movie, that doesn't give you a free pass here. You also gave a terrible performance in this movie. If you at least tried, you would have a justification for shitting on this movie. But just like everyone else here, you took the paycheck, you went home. And that's the same thing with the entire ensemble here. And the terrible direction from S.J. Clarkson. This movie is a waste of time. It's just not worth anything. It's so bad. At 3, more Netflix slop, we have Uglies. Another just terrible movie. Like, it's one of those cliched Netflix movies where they're like, these people are ugly and, you know, they're actually quite good looking people. That was the same thing with this movie. No one in here was deformed or looked disgusting or ugly. Not at all. These people are actors and there's nothing that is done to make them look ugly to fit the concept. And at times it actually felt like the beautiful utopian people looked uglier in moments with this fake cosmetic look. The way that these characters appeared and its commentary is all superficial. Doesn't do anything. I actually think it does a disservice to talking about body issues and the way that people judge each other based off appearance. There's just nothing of substance here. Once again, the middle 45 minutes of this, I swear I fell asleep. Like, this is nothing. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, all these movies just don't do anything for me. And Uglies is, once again, the same thing. It was just a pain to get through. And I don't care if this happens to be a faithful adaptation of the book. If it is, the book is shit as well. Just because a movie is based off a book does not mean that the book is all that either. I feel like this book is probably terrible and they adapted that into a pretty shit movie. So congratulations, Mick G. Another shit movie from you. Now, these two movies are ones that I distinctly remember for being just absolute garbage, and there was a bit of a toss-up between the two. And at number 2, I decided to go The Crow. I'm mad at this movie for a lot of reasons. Firstly, this was my first exposure to the storyline of The Crow. I had not seen the original with Brandon Lee yet. Not that I needed to. I mean, if you want to reinvent the wheel and have a new take on this story, you should be trying to make the definitive tale here of The Crow. And that's not what this is at all. You have a romance story between two characters that have zero chemistry. I'm sorry, if you think that this is real love that they're presenting on screen, you do not know what real love is. These characters just go through a basic ass Tumblr romance. It feels like the director watched Suicide Squad and was one of those people that loved the relationship between Jared Leto's Joker and Harley Quinn and said, let's make that the whole movie. Because that's what this feels like. There are talented people involved in this project, like Bill Skarsgård. But boy, oh boy, what are you doing here? I mean, there's just nothing that you are offering here that convinces me that you're a good performer. If I had not seen some of his other work, I would be convinced that Bill Skarsgård does not have what it takes to make it as a Hollywood actor. The performance is so edgelord, cringy, 12-year-old nonsense, written so poorly. And to top that off, I decided afterwards to watch Brandon Lee's The Crow because I thought there's no way that it could be this bad. And that's not the case. After watching Brandon Lee's The Crow, man, that's such a better movie than this. It's dripping with atmosphere, a performance that feels like, you know, he's trying, you know, Brandon Lee's giving it his all. This is a definitive performance from him. And what makes this even worse is that you made such a sloppy remake based off a film where someone lost their life playing that character. It means something to a lot of people. It probably means a lot to that family, that role. And to see them just make this utter slop is insulting in every single level. And I was actually very mad at this movie for just attempting to make something so effortless and cynical. I was really pissed off at this movie. But coming in at number 1, a movie that a lot of people really agreed with me when I gave this my lowest score I could possibly give, and nothing has changed. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, is easily the worst movie I saw in 2024. I'm usually a Zack Snyder fan, especially his superhero movies. I don't care how divisive they are. I loved Watchmen. I like Batman vs Superman. I love his version of Justice League. I could watch those movies many times, and I have watched them a few times. I watched Rebel Moon Part 1, and I said, yes, that movie's shit, but it seems like they're trying to connect us to all these characters, and it's trying to set things up for the second part. And you watch the second part, and it just fails in its execution across the board and provides yet again another frustratingly boring sci-fi film that is so derivative of things like Star Wars. And this was marketed initially when these two movies came out that it would be a two-part story. Part 1 would be the beginning, part 2 would be the end. But then I'm hearing when this movie's releasing that Zack Snyder wants to make multiple movies. And you see that at the very end of this movie, they start randomly setting up a third part. It feels so contrived and so cynical. I have been on board with Zack Snyder and his director's cut. I genuinely think he got fucked over by Warner Brothers when making Batman vs Superman and Justice League. But I cannot give him a pass on this one. This feels like he is solely responsible for this. I do not buy for a second that Netflix mandated him to make a PG-13 cut, because Netflix are, love them or hate them, are willing to spend a fuck ton of money for a filmmaker to make whatever they want. David Fincher's The Killer was an expensive ass movie. The Irishman was a really expensive movie. They are willing to throw money at directors to make the project that they want on their platform. And you're telling me that Zack Snyder, a very recognizable name, is the only director here that is mandated to make a movie this way? Get fucked. I don't buy it for a second. I think Zack Snyder wanted this because that's what he likes to do. He's fascinated with the idea of having an original theatrical cut and providing a little bit more in the director's cut. And I'm not watching the director's cut. Get fucked. You burnt that bridge with me with these two movies. I'm not wasting my fucking time on these movies that don't seem to give a single shit about the audience's experience. I don't like that Netflix, Zack Snyder, whoever is responsible here, to give you a shit cut and go, oh, well, we're going to improve on it in the director's cut. The one that you just watched, the one that we've been marketing forever, that's not the real one. This one that's going to come out in a much quieter release is actually the real one. And it's 3 hours long, and apparently a bunch of blood and sex is going to change that. Get fucked, man. I don't buy that for a second. This is like 13-year-old nonsense. If you like these movies, I mean, all power to you, but fuck, man, I think there's so much better in the genre. I think there's so much better that you could see just in general, man. And Zack Snyder himself can do better. It's just disappointing on all fronts. And I think the fact that Zack Snyder has made films that I liked makes these movies even more bitterly disappointing because they feel so low effort, bland, and just not written very well at all. And that is why Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scar Giver, is my least favorite movie of 2024. I hope it burns and we never get to talk about it again, because fuck that movie. And those are my 10 worst films of 2024. Let me know what the 10 worst films of 2024 for you are in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think we'll have different lists because, as I said, I haven't seen a few movies that a lot of people are saying are the worst of the year. These are the ones that I saw, unfortunately, that I sat the whole way through, suffered through, and yeah, stay away from these movies. I don't recommend any of them at all, and not even really for a laugh, I'm afraid. Now that we have the top 10 most anticipated films of 2025 list and the top 10 worst list of 2024 out of the way, the next one that I am making is the 3rd Annual Kane Eddy Awards, January 10th, where we get to celebrate the best films of the year. The video that I've been looking forward to putting together for the last month or so. Now, I've slowly been working on some things, and I'm just waiting to watch one more movie, maybe 2 more movies, and then boom, I'm fully into filming, creating that video for you guys. So make sure to check that out. January 10th. You can still vote for the People's Choice Award. I'll have the link down below. I will be closing that down very soon though, so make sure to get your votes in quick. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.